Many occult traditions have been central to the story of Silent Hill. The very first game centered on the Flauros, named for a demon of the Lemmigeddon. Much of the game's symbolism came from demon lore and Western magical tradition. In Silent Hill 3, this evolved into tarot cards and the Seal of Metatron. But the fourth game takes a turn into a different corner of the occult. Silent Hill 4 leaves behind obvious symbolic elements like cards and seals, focusing instead on numbers. Numerology has been an element of occult tradition for millennia. Every culture has its own theory of what numbers are and what they represent, tying them into divination and fortune-telling. While Silent Hill 4 is not overt about its numeric inspiration, it's obvious when you consider how many numbers appear in it. Room 302 is the focus of the story, the mother Walter wishes to resurrect. The ritual is the 21 Sacraments, and each sacrament is a specific person and theme tied to a number. What do these numbers mean, and how might they tie into the ritual and story of Silent Hill 4? In Western traditions, numerology is heavily based on Christian thought, the focus on a single god, who can be divided into three but is ultimately still one, the duality of good versus evil, the balance of dark and light. All of this is found in Western numerology. 0 is an empty circle that indicates nothing, representing potential. It is the origin of all, since everything came from nothing, and it has the capability to become anything. 1 is God, the ultimate, the symbol of creation and all existence. It is masculine, creative, powerful. It is the being that creates all and all comes from it. The self, the ego, the leader, and creator. 1 represents beginnings as well as destruction, breaking down the old. 2, on the other hand, is feminine. It is balance, duality, opposites, dark and light, this and that. It is feelings and consciousness, imbalance and imperfection. 3 is perfection, complexity, the Trinity of the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. It represents personal creativity, initiative, action, and creation. 4 represents the material world. In ancient alchemical thought, 4 elements made all creation, so the number 4 represents this physical world we are in, the pieces that create it. It is practical, instinctual, logical, and concrete. 5 represents the senses, the world we experience, the physical personal realm. It represents facts and knowledge. 6 is imagination, abstraction, the physical world plus 1, representing what's beyond physical, what's fantasy. It represents harmony, a perfect balance of the Trinity twice, the number of God and the number of balance. 7 is a number of power, tying into many things the ancients believed were solid facts about the universe. There were 7 planets, 7 days of the week, 7 angels of revelation, 7 hills in Rome. The number 7 was part of the fabric of reality. And since the Trinity plus the material world made 7, 7 was said to represent all reality, the physical and imaginary and divine. 8 is eternity, timelessness, empty space, the unconscious. 9 is the Trinity times itself, making it representative of the divine, of completion, of spiritual creation, representing endings as well as new beginnings. The interpretation of these numbers has been used on everything from personal names to words in the Bible, all in an attempt to determine possible future events or what type of job someone should get. The meanings of the individual numbers can be combined to interpret larger numbers going into infinity, and still today, many believe these numbers hold secret meanings for each of us. But what meaning do they hold for Silent Hill 4 and the 21 Sacraments? One of the most important numbers of the title is 302. It is our hub, our home, which Walter wishes to take over and invade. The only way in and out of this apartment is through holes, and 302 has a hole right in the middle of it. That hole represents nothingness, potential. It is the womb which Walter wishes to return to, the room in which he was born. On one side is the number for the Trinity, for God and the divine, and on the other, the human number, the male and female, balance. It's a pretty well-picked number for our home base. Another important number in the game is the number 4, though it's far more subtle. Most of the world building and level design is centered around a pattern of 4. There are 4 Walters in the game. There are 4 central worlds. There are 4 victims Henry fails to save. 4 items used to finish a puzzle. 4 numbers to unlock a keypad. 4 possible endings to the game. Most of the numbers in the game relate to the Sacraments, with each tied to a specific victim. Clearly, some will not be important in terms of numerology. Everyone has to have a number, and some will be random. But some of the combinations do seem to have deeper meaning. Take Walter's number, 11. As both killer and sacrifice, Walter's number divides the sacrifices in half. 10 while he was alive, another 10 after his death. The assumption is meant to make him a spirit who can kill, a god in a sense. And the number 11 is the deity twice. 1 is divine, creator, all-powerful. Walter is in essence doubling God by making himself into a killer spirit. Eileen's number also has some relevance to her role. She is victim 20, a solid number and a feminine one. The 2 is considered the female number of balance and feeling. The 0, the number for the womb and potential. Together, 20 becomes a number of female potential, of the unborn. And of course, there is 21. It too is a feminine number, with the 2 leading, but the one behind it is masculine, divine, powerful. It is imbalanced, 1 number off of a solid foundation, and that 1 extra is Walter. Without him, there are 20 sacrifices, an easily divisible number. The 21st sacrifice, Henry, is a bit off balance, just like the number. A sacrament typically refers to Christian traditions, believed to be instituted by Christ himself, considered to be a visible form of grace. It is God's grace made manifest, the holy blessing brought to earth. Which rituals varies by tradition, but often includes baptism, first communion, confession, ordination, anointing, even marriage. The term comes from the Latin sacer, meaning sacred or holy. Originally, it was used in Rome to refer to a soldier's oath of allegiance to the city. It is a solemn, religious bond, a ritual that transforms the performer and brings them closer to God. Some of the objects found in Silent Hill relate to these traditions, particularly the white chrism. Chrism, also known as myrrh, is a mixture of oil and perfume used in anointing and other sacraments. It has been used for healing, to bless churches, and as a part of baptisms. In Silent Hill 4, you can see a bottle of white chrism in the room with Walter's body, alongside a mortar and pestle, 2 candles, a book, and the obsidian goblet. In Silent Hill 2, where the chrism first appears, the bottle is said to read, "I deny thee." In that game, it is used in the rebirth ending. Perhaps these words are a denial of death. Walter, dying and being reborn, is also denying the afterlife. The texts which discuss the stages of the 21 Sacrament ritual refer to 4 signs. There are the first, second, third, and final signs, in a similar style to the signs depicted in Revelations. The biblical text describes a coming apocalypse and the events that precede it, including a series of 7 signs. The first is a pregnant woman clothed in the sun. The second is a great red dragon, and the third, a male child. The usage of similar language in the 21 Sacraments implies this is an apocalyptic ritual, something that will end one world in the process of creating another. Later in the game, Jasper refers to the signs as revelations. When he sees young Walter, he grows excited. He proclaims that the 3rd revelation is finally here. In the Wish House, we are able to read the entirety of the sacraments for the first time. The Descent of the Holy Mother, the 21 Sacraments, is the full title. It goes on to describe the signs in biblical fashion, with God giving instructions to her followers in obscure language. Examining the Japanese and English versions, you get a fuller picture of what the ritual might be saying. In Japanese, the texts of the sacraments are referred to as keiji, which can be translated as divine revelation. It seems to be the term used to refer to the Christian concept of revelation, rather than a general prophecy or religious message. Each revelation opens with shu iwaku, The Lord says, "At the time of fullness, the ritual should be performed, perhaps at a specific time, as when the moon is full. Then the world must be cleansed or purified using the rage of God. Using the white chrism and the obsidian goblet, as well as the blood and hearts, the killer prepares to ascend." The major difference between the Japanese and English versions of these texts is a single phrase, the term used for blood. Terms for blood in Japanese include chi and ketsueki, a more formal term. Neither of these terms appears in the Sacraments, however. Instead, the reader is told to gather the sumi no ju no shinzo no ikichi, the lifeblood of the hearts of 10 sinners. The difference is small, but could mean a great deal for the ritual. It is not just blood, but lifeblood that must be gathered, perhaps implying the blood must be fresh or still alive. Or perhaps Walter is meant to use it soon after harvesting it, or he is meant to revive it by placing it back in his own veins. The blood theme continues in the second section. The English version tells the reader to offer the sinner's blood and the oil, nothing else. In the Japanese version, however, it refers to blood twice. Shu iwaku nanji shiro no abura, toju no shinzo no ikichi totomoni, mizukara no chi o hono seyo. The first phrase is "the Lord says." The second phrase, similar to the first revelation, tells the reader to have the white oil and the sinner's blood together. Then a final phrase tells them to present them as an offering, hono seyo, along with their own blood, mizukara no chi. This is the stage of the ritual that implies Walter's own sacrifice as the 11th victim. This line seems to be missing from the English translation. Doing so sets him free from the bonds of flesh to gain the power of heaven, or in Japanese, ni no kuni no shikara yadoran. Kuni is a term referring to country that's also often used to refer to a land or place generally. I think it's likely ni no kuni was meant to refer to a second world, i.e. the other world or the realm of Walter's dreams. The 4 elements of the first 4 killings are mentioned. Out of the dark and void, the killer must bring forth gloom, and gird thyself with despair for the giver of wisdom. The 3rd sign has you returning to the source through temptation. Then you must be under the watchful eye of the demon, or chie naki akuma, which seems to mean the wisdomless demon. Then you wander in chaos, and the 4 atonements will be in alignment. Then the last sign, you must also separate from the flesh the mother reborn and the receiver of wisdom. Notice the language makes a connection between Eileen, Henry, and Walter. The other killings are only mentioned by symbolic title, but Walter must be freed from his flesh to become a godly spirit, and in the last sign, Henry and Eileen must also be set free. It implies their role in the ritual is different from mere sacrifices. In fact, it equivocates the 3 of them. Like Walter, it sounds as if Eileen and Henry are meant to ascend. Eileen is Hananaru Karada to Naru Mono, one who will become a mother's body. Henry is referred to as Saigo no Chie no Uketsugu Mono, one who will receive the last wisdom. Then the sacred mother, Seinaru Haha, will appear and save the land of sin, or Sumi no Kuni. What's unique about the sacraments is how varied they seem to be. The ritual doesn't appear to demand a specific type of victim or manner of death. There's almost no order or reason to who is picked to die or when they're killed. Members of the order die as victims 1, 6, and 14. A group of friends are killed as victims 2, 3, and 17. Then 4 people are killed at the shopping center as 4, 5, 9, and 10. Considering the mystery surrounding Walter's death alongside the random, illogical pattern of his killings, one conclusion seems likely. He was already more than human even before he died. There's only one certain fact we can know about Walter's victims based upon a small piece of lore revealed in-game. I think it's likely his victims were chosen for him, years before the events of the game began, because of a line of dialogue. When Walter and Cynthia meet in the subway, Cynthia is put off when Walter claims to have already known her name, having first heard it 10 years before. There are many theories as to what this means, primarily that Walter was stalking her, but the timeline clears up any misconceptions. 34 years before the game began, Walter was born. 28 years before, Walter met Dahlia Gillespie, who told him about the ritual. 18 years before, he meets Cynthia and says he heard her name 10 years before. That specific amount of years puts us back to the meeting with Dahlia, when he was first told about the ritual, which implies Dahlia herself told him who he was to kill, or perhaps some element of the ritual performed then revealed to Walter who his later targets would be. But how and when exactly did Walter kill his victims? The lore implies certain victims die on the same day, such as those at the shopping center. Yet 3 victims die in between. George Roston is killed at the Wish House as victim 6, and Miriam and Billy are in their own backyard as 7 and 8. Why would Walter leave, kill others, and return? A note from Joseph says the 10 victims were killed in 10 days, seeming to imply 1 victim a day. That can't work when we know victims like Miriam and Billy died together. It becomes logical if you consider it as the order in which Walter killed his victims, but not necessarily the order it happened in real time. If Walter is capable of moving in and out of reality, of shifting through the other world, perhaps that explains his strange relationship to physical reality. Before the ritual's beginnings, one of Walter's teachers allows Voltiel into his mind so he can complete the ritual. Voltiel, the demon attendant of God, is associated with the other world and the transition between. This could be the source of Walter's burgeoning power, and would explain why no evidence, no fingerprints or fibers were found on his victims. He was not there in the physical world, but was in between worlds. The manner of deaths he uses also implies an increasing frantic energy to the killings. He begins with Jimmy Stone, his former priest, shooting him in the back of the head with a gun. This implies some trust, a relationship, as Jimmy had his back to Walter, but it lacks a sense of bloodlust. A single shot to the back of the head is quick, painless, and almost merciful. His next victims increase in number and intensity. He kills 2 at once, which also implies a supernatural element. 3 high school kids sneak onto a college campus in search of the rumored killer attending school there. They find him and try to run, but only 1 gets away. How could the killer pin 2 people at once unless supernatural powers were in play? Both Bobby and Sign are caught and suffocated. A far more personal method of killing, but still not very bloody. Then Walter begins to up the ante. His first victim was a person he had a past with. His next 2 sought him out. This time, Walter seeks a man he has a grudge with and kills not only Steve Garland, but all the pets in his store using a machine gun. The next victim is Richard Albert, the sports store manager. The lore implies Walter was an employee at his store. Someone comes in to tell Rick about the murder, speaking excitedly, knowing more than they should. Rick is described as gentle and kind. If Walter was willingly working for him, he must have at least tolerated him, as opposed to the hatred he had for Pet Store Steve. Perhaps Walter was proud of his murder, eager to talk about it, and was put off by Rick's horror and suspicion. Walter beats the man to death with a golf club. This murder is more off the cuff compared to his premeditated murder of Steve. He didn't bring a weapon with him to the sports store. He had to take one off the shelves. The next victim is another member of the cult, George Roston, manager of the orphanage. It was George who personally taught Walter the rituals, inserted Voltiel into his mind, and likely oversaw his growth at the orphanage. Like Jimmy, he is also killed in the Wish House. Unlike Jimmy, George is downstairs, beaten to death with a pipe, a more violent, extended killing. Unlike the other 2 priests, George does not appear as a ghost, though it's possible he is the doll that appears later in-game. Then Billy and Miriam are killed with an axe while playing in their backyard. It feels more planned, yet still surprising. Billy runs a little too far from home and is quickly killed painlessly with 1 blow. Miriam suffers a worse fate. Walter drags out her death by dismemberment. Then he returns to the shopping center to kill the clock store owner, William Gregory, by stabbing him with his own screwdriver. Lastly is Eric Walsh, the bartender, who hears about the killings and decides to head home early. Unfortunately, he enters his house to find Walter, who shoots him in the face. Where did the machine gun or the lead pipe or the axe or handgun go? All these killings, with different weapons in different places, none of them leaving a trace of Walter's presence. The last killing of Eric Walsh occurs at home, where evidence of his family is everywhere. There's a birthday cake and decorations, but no sign of his loved ones. Neither are there signs Walter's killed them. Instead, perhaps the house Eric entered was the otherworld version of his home, where Walter was waiting. An otherworld that allowed him to shift places, times, and even weapons at will. 2 victims were strangled, 2 shot in the head, another with a machine gun. 2 were killed with an axe, 1 with a screwdriver, and 2 were beaten to death. Most of these deaths were violent and bloody, all of them avoiding endangering the heart. The central focus of these killings are the blood and hearts of the sinners, the first 10 victims, which must be gathered for the Assumption ritual. In Japanese, the term used for sin is sumi, indicating the violation of social taboos or religious traditions. In its original context, the word can relate not only to human sin, but to natural disasters and defilement related to the spiritual world. In that sense, these are not necessarily evildoers, but polluted people, defiled. Blood may refer to the shedding of blood at the scene, but 2 victims' deaths were bloodless, so it's more likely it relates to the collection of their blood in the aftermath. The incredibly violent, audacious nature of the attacks makes it unlikely Walter could safely collect the blood and hearts without getting caught, yet he does. Another sign that certain events are occurring outside of normal space and time. The ritual is fully known as the Descent of the Holy Mother. Another term used in the rituals is Assumption. Holy Mother's a heavy term in Western tradition, used almost solely to refer to the Mother of Christ or the Catholic Church. In many traditions, it's believed that Mary never physically died, but that she was taken up to heaven body and soul, known as the Assumption. The Bible does not confirm it. It relates only 2 assumptions in the canonical tradition, Enoch and Elijah, but the belief Mary was also taken up holds strong. In Silent Hill terms, Walter's Assumption is a holy ritual to bring him, body and soul, into the spiritual realm. This may be why his corpse, decades after passing on, still looks relatively fresh, and why he is the most physical of the spirits, moving almost like an ordinary human. The first 10 victims were the hearts, which Walter collects and uses to perform his holy Assumption. He carves his numbers into his feet, leaving his shoes by the door, and he appears to nail himself to a cross. The usage of the cross fully ties Walter and his themes into the Christ narrative. He dies as a sacrifice to create paradise, just as Jesus' death is said to have opened the way to heaven. Why blood and hearts? In Christian and Catholic tradition, the heart is heavily associated with Jesus, and to an extent with Mary. The heart, as a symbol of his sacrifice and suffering, became popular in the last few hundred years. Often it is depicted bleeding, with a crown of thorns or nails, even a spear impaling it, all to represent the wounds Christ suffered on the cross. It is a symbol of devotion and holy love, of suffering and pain in the service of others, a reminder of the great sacrifice. Blood and hearts in a ritual to kill a man on a cross can only pull on the theme of Christ's sacrifice, of his holy blood, which in this ritual makes a man into a god. Once the ritual is performed and Walter has passed on, a new reality is created from his subconscious, the other worlds which Henry will use to travel through Walter's memories and try to save his victims. In Japanese, these worlds he travels through are seikai, a term often used in Buddhist tradition. It's used to translate the Sanskrit term lokadhatu, or world system. In Buddhist thought, reality is made of countless systems of worlds, each one containing a reality made of Mount Meru, the holy mountain at the center. Rising up and down the mountain are realms of existence, places where demons, humans, and gods all live and die. Tradition says there are 4 continents surrounding the mountain, and in Silent Hill 4, there are 4 realms through which Henry travels. All told, however, the number of realms is actually 9. Each realm, subway, forest, prison, and building, is traveled through twice. In the middle, Henry enters the short hospital world before returning to these other worlds. And the apartments represent a hub, a base that is both outside of the realms and the route Henry is traveling towards. Altogether, 9 realms connected to a central root has a powerful mythic history. The town Henry lives in is called Ashfield. The name comes from the English place name meaning open field with ash trees, and the ash tree is a potent magical symbol, particularly in Norse tradition. Yggdrasil, the world tree that connects the 9 realms, is an ash tree, and in Silent Hill 4, the town of Ashfield contains an apartment that connects 9 dream realms together. There are even traditions of self-sacrifice and death in the Norse myth of Yggdrasil. In one story, Odin hangs himself from a tree. Interpretations of the name Yggdrasil lead some to believe it is that tree, and that it was created from Odin's sacrifice. Walter's worlds also exist due to the sacrifice of many lives, including his own, which then creates the various worlds of his dreams. This connection to Norse myth, and Odin in particular, may explain a unique element of Walter's appearance: the black feathers. When his body is found in the apartment, the cross he's nailed to is covered in feathers. When you approach his empty coffin in the forest world, a mass of hummers fly out, similar in appearance to a flock of black birds. And in his monstrous final form, you can see black feathers on the back of his neck. These may relate to Hugin and Munin, a pair of ravens who served Odin, acting as spies. The next stage of the ritual after Walter's death comes 2.5 years after the first. It can be divided into 2 sections, one which occurs before the game's events, and one which occurs during. Both are mirrors of each other, a set of 4 deaths themed around specific elements which fit into a larger religious tradition. The Christian themes feature most heavily in the first 10 victims, before Walter ascends. Now that Walter is no longer human, Christian meaning begins to slip away. This is not the realm of one god incarnated into flesh. Now we enter a realm of Buddhist meaning, in which our characters are attempting to reach higher realities via spiritual transformation. The characters who canonically die make 8 victims. In Buddhism, it is the Eightfold Path which leads to enlightenment, to the realization that the physical world is flawed, and only by escaping it can we reach nirvana. Each victim has a theme, just as each part of the path is based upon acquiring certain skills. Ultimately, Walter is attempting to grow spiritually in order to ascend, and does so using the lives of others. The first death is Peter Walls, a fitting choice. Walter has ascended like the Christ entering heaven, and it is Saint Peter who guards the pearly gates. He's beaten to death in a hotel room and found months later, but in the extended lore we learn he was smoking, apparently standing by a ladder attached to the building. In front of his friends, he climbs the ladder. At the top, he shouts that he can see God, and then disappears. Ladders have long been associated with heaven in Christianity. Many stories and works of art depict a ladder as an entrance to heaven, and St. Peter as the guard of that entrance. More than that, it may relate to a phrase from Peter's section of the Bible. 2 Peter reads, "Make every effort to add to your faith goodness, to your goodness knowledge, to knowledge self-control, to self-control perseverance, to perseverance godliness, and to godliness mutual affection, to mutual affection love." This phrase seems to show a step-by-step plan to improving your character, and many Christian traditions refer to this as Peter's ladder. Note it too has 8 steps. This section of the ritual associates each death with a theme. Peter's is void, or kyomu, combining the kanji for nothingness and oblivion with emptiness or falsehood. This kanji can be read as mu, a term used in Zen Buddhism to refer to nothingness. Marijuana, Peter's object, is associated with a dulling, calming of the senses, making Peter's theme complete emptiness, the kind of nothingness that came before existence, the void, total absence. The next death is Sharon Blake, one of the few women. Her family disappeared, taken by the Order. Seeking them out in the woods, she finds their gravestones, where Walter drowns her at the lake. Sharon is dressed in all black, as if attending a funeral, and her theme is darkness, or ankoku, combining the kanji for darkness and black. First we had nothing. From nothing comes deep, dark shadows. It's associated with mourning because of Sharon's situation and her manner of dress. The implication seems to be that once the world was created from nothing, suffering began. Perhaps that is why the next theme is gloom or yutsu, the Japanese term used to refer to clinical depression. Once the world exists, there is suffering, and we suffer emotionally. The 14th victim is Toby Archbold, the last of the 3 Order members to be killed. Lore states that Toby began increasing his influence in the cult when others passed, starting to sell drugs. He's killed during a trip to Mexico, the implication being he was purchasing more product. Walter kills him by shoving him off a cliff, a strangely detached and impersonal manner of death. Toby's name is a diminutive of Tobias, son of Tobit, who in the Bible travels far from home and is only able to return due to the help of an angel. Unfortunately for Toby, his return is only spiritual. The next victim is Joseph Schreiber, a prominent character barely seen on screen. His name, like so many others, is a biblical one. In Hebrew, it means God will add. 2 famous Josephs appear in the Bible, the 12th son of Jacob and Rachel, and the husband of Mary, who is said to have buried Christ after his crucifixion. Schreiber's theme is despair. He's also called the giver of wisdom, acting as a teacher to Henry. It is Joseph who investigates Walter's original murders, discovers his body is missing, and ultimately finds where it's really hidden. Much of the game's lore is revealed through him. He is the only spirit who seems to have some control of himself, possibly because he is wisdom. His fate is horrific. No longer just imprisoned in room 302, he has become part of it. The theme of despair is called zetsubo in Japanese. It is not merely sorrow, but hopelessness, a loss of faith in the future. In this way, melancholy and depression lead to a loss of hope, a surrendering. The same term is used to refer to the pickaxe of despair, a weapon Henry can use. It has a partner, the pickaxe of hope, a non-weapon used to open the way to the final boss. The implication is obvious. Without hope, there is no future. But with hope, Henry has a chance to fight his way to freedom. The focus on hope seems clear when you consider the name of the orphanage Walter grew up in. In Japanese, it is called Kibo no E, which can be translated to House of Hope. The article Joseph writes about the place is called Teaching Despair. Walter grew up in a place named for hope, which taught him the opposite. He became depressed because of his childhood, which is what led him to this dark path. Only hope can overcome it. The next 4 steps of the ritual focus on the themes of temptation, origin, surveillance, and chaos, each of which relates to a murder that occurs in-game. Briefly, they seem to imply a return to primordial existence, to a state before the world. Having come from nothingness into darkness, depression, and finally despair, now we are tempted by Cynthia. Cynthia is young and attractive, and paid attention to Walter when they spoke in the subway. But when Walter reached out to her, she rebuffed him. This was during a time Walter was homeless and seemingly no longer involved in the cult. Cynthia may represent simple physical attraction, Walter's first experience with sexuality, or she may represent the outside world, a general temptation to enter normal life as opposed to the cult he left behind. Her world, the subway, is a place in transition between here and there. Cynthia's rebuff of Walter may not just represent a sexual one, but the normal world itself rebuffing him. No one will help him no matter how desperate he is. The Japanese term for temptation, yuwaku, implies a trap or snare. Considering Cynthia's physical sexual role, it appears to present the physical world as a temptation to escape despair, to lose yourself in pleasure. This is a trap, a falsehood, and the next step implies that overcoming that temptation leads to a new beginning. It is origin, or kigen, which can mean genesis, beginning, or derivation, a kind of fountainhead that flows from one source to create a new path. Jasper, the second victim, represents this origin. He's found in the forest near the Wish House where Walter grew up, his own origin place, and he's also connected to early victims. The second and third people killed were his friends. His dress reflects his occult interests. His shirt has a monster from the first game on it, tying him to the unnatural as well as the origins of the series itself. From there comes surveillance, or kanshi. Having started over, the new god observes his creation. It is good. This, of course, is Andrew, who's had his past role as a guardsman turned against him. Last is chaos, using the term kontan, which derives from the Chinese hundun. It is primordial chaos, the name given to the state of the world before reality existed. It can mean whole and inseparable, unclear and obscure. It refers to confusion and the chaotic. Hundun is what we were long before. In this set of 8, it is what we become in the end, overcoming the physical world and emotional turmoil to return everything to what it was before creation, so it can be remade. Richard represents this chaos. He's a figure who blocks Walter's way into the building as a child. Unpredictable and violent, his behavior chaotic. He is a figure near the womb, the origin, who blocks the way. He's the chaos that comes before birth, the primordial darkness that must be overcome to create the universe. Each of these 4 sacrifices seems to embody an element of alchemical and magical tradition. One made to bleed, one burned alive, another drowned, a 4th electrocuted. Bleeding, burning, and drowning have long been associated with methods of execution in magical and religious tradition, and electrocution's a more modern method of state-sanctioned death. Then we come to the final, most essential victims of the 21 Sacraments. The characters the player spends the most time with in-game. First is Eileen, or the Mother Reborn. Both her first and last names have Irish origins. Eileen is the anglicized Eileen. Theories on its meaning range from radiance to beauty to desire. Her last name is more certain. It comes from the Irish Gaelvan, meaning bright or white. All told, she is a figure of beauty, of bright light, angelic figure who matches Walter's ideal of the Holy Mother. Yet despite representing this ideal, she suffers greatly at Walter's hands. She is the mother that is missing. In Walter's heart, there is the constant fear perhaps he was not separated from her but was abandoned by her. This manifests itself in an extreme hatred of women. Female monsters are brutalized, mannequins are twisted and deformed, stabbed and tormented, hung on torture devices. This was reinforced by the first scene in the hospital showing Walter making false love to a female corpse he's torturing. Walter's hatred and love for the mother figure are intertwined. He cannot help but long for the love he never had while despising the woman for being missing from his life. That divide is best represented in Eileen's salvation. She is tormented by Walter's adult self, yet saved by the intervention of his younger self. This young Walter hardly could have stopped the attack by force. He's just a child, and later in the game we'll see his young form is helpless before the adult one. Yet the adult backs off in this moment, possibly reflecting doubt or regret that exists in the older Walter too. He hesitates at the moment of his glory, when victim 20 of 21 could have been killed but wasn't. In the 21 Sacraments, Eileen represents the Mother Reborn. Compared to what we know about the ritual, it implies the rebirth of creation is going to occur through Eileen as a vessel. She is the mother that will give birth to a new world. In Japanese, her role is botai, a term used specifically to refer to a mother's body, referencing pregnancy or childbirth. Eileen is pregnant with reality. This is further explored in the Japanese text of the Descent of the Holy Mother, where the final success of the ritual is described as Seinaru Kagen. It could maybe be translated as the presence or consciousness of the Holy Mother. The text is hard to understand with my very basic Japanese knowledge, but it doesn't seem to refer to a literal mother being born, but to a world of motherhood consciousness being created, perhaps a reality formed in the literal womb. Henry Townshend is our protagonist and our final victim, our hero who spends much of his time watching, running, and failing. In the tradition of Silent Hill protagonists, much of his heroism comes from his attempts to help others, rather than his successes, and there's the chance he could fail to save anyone, even himself. His name comes from the Germanic Heimrich, Heim meaning home, Rich meaning ruler. The surname is English for dweller at the town's end, a person who lives at a distance from everyone else. He rules his solitary, isolated home, a perfect image of a man trapped in his apartment. It is his domain, and he is safe there for now, but Walter is coming for his crown. Small details in the game imply a background that isn't dissimilar to Walter's own, if less severe. Henry seems to have had a difficult childhood, no relationship with his family, no friends, and has retreated from the world, possibly from fear of judgment or social ostracization. Henry's in a good position to understand Walter's past and empathize with it, which is why he's the receiver of wisdom. The wisdom he receives comes from watching the attacks, from attempting to save Eileen, from facing obstacles Walter puts in his way, particularly the one truth. One of the few boss fights in the game reflects a truth Walter is attempting to teach Henry in his own twisted fashion. The one truth appears before the truth is revealed to us in the Room 302 of the past, where we finally meet Joseph Schreiber. The monster appears similar to the man, both are torsos trapped in walls, unable to escape, and both are focused on the idea of truth or revelation. The monster is a kind of boss battle, but a simple one. Most of its bodies are fakes, and only one target exists. Find it, and you can defeat the monster. Finding the truth among the lies, all of which appear physically true and real, is a very Buddhist concept, and comes after a long theme of darkly twisted Buddhist imagery in our murderous Eightfold Path. Fighting along a thin pathway that surrounds a bottomless abyss seems to imply Henry is standing on a precipice edge. One small mistake and he could fall into nothingness, failing his quest to find the truth. The Japanese name reinforces the Buddhist themes behind the creature. It is called Hitotsu no Shinjitsu. Shinjitsu means truth or reality. It is a synonym of Shinyo, a term more strictly Buddhist. In Buddhism, there's conceptual truth, things that are true in context. It is true the sky is blue because our eyes see it that way. Ultimate truth says the sky is not blue, because blue is an experience that exists only because we have eyes. Ultimate truth goes beyond what we see, experience, feel, or know, to what can be said is true in every circumstance and version of reality, which is to say nothing. Only nothing is ultimately true, and accepting ultimate truth is to accept that our truths ultimately mean nothing. All the bodies appear true, they look true, but only one is real. A similar kind of false body exists in the final boss fight. Walter's ghostly form cannot be harmed until his true body has been made weak. First using the umbilical cord, second attacking the monster with each of the 8 spears. Each spear represents a spirit killed and absorbed by the other world, a victim of Walter's. There's a spear in the story of Christ, too, known as the Spear of Longinus. At the end of the crucifixion, a Roman soldier stabs Christ's side with a spear to ensure he is dead. The way the spears in Silent Hill 4 appear embedded in the side of a shadowy body is very similar to the Christ imagery, and they are also used to ensure a man is really dead. Henry is the last victim of the 21 Sacraments, meant to be a witness, and as witness, he attempts to intervene as much as possible. In Japanese, the word used for wisdom is chie. It has a heavily Buddhist context, as it's the Japanese term used to translate the Sanskrit jnana and prajna. Both these words relate to Buddhist ideas of truth. Prajna is the more likely term being referenced in Silent Hill 4, and it is more widely used to refer to wisdom or insight, to an understanding of the fundamental nature of existence. In Theravadan Buddhism, this understanding relates to the knowledge that life is suffering, and only the Eightfold Path can lead to enlightenment. Younger traditions in the Mahayana school become more complex. Prajna is the understanding of the emptiness of reality, the fact that truth is conceptual. In this sense, combined with our Eightfold Path of the Sacraments, Henry takes on an incredibly important role in the ritual. His title implies it. The Japanese word translated as receiver is the verb sazukaru. It means to be awarded, received, gifted, or endowed with. In a religious sense, it can mean to be blessed or initiated into secret knowledge. Together, it implies that Henry is being initiated into truth, that his role as a witness is meant to teach him the same thing that Walter knows, that reality is nothing. Suddenly, the game takes on a dark twist. Is this whole ritual meant to convince Henry to join Walter? It's obvious in the beginning Henry does not agree, where Walter sees the world as nothing but suffering, and is okay with killing to escape that suffering. Henry is not willing to let even strangers suffer or die in front of him. This also explains a lot of the world building that seems strange. After all, if Henry is a prisoner, why is he allowed to escape into dreams? Why is he allowed to interfere if Walter completely controls the other worlds? It makes sense if this is all meant to show Henry the truth. He sees Walter's past to understand Walter's choice. Memories and old wounds appear throughout the other world, revealing Walter's darkest secrets, because Walter wants him to understand. If Walter merely means to kill Henry, why would his own otherworld reveal his secret hurts and feelings? But if Henry is meant to be convinced of Walter's beliefs, it makes sense Walter would show him why he became this way. It also explains why Walter allows Henry to fight back. Henry cannot be controlled or forced into the choice. He must come to willingly believe, which also explains why, even in victory, Henry might not win. The 21 Sacraments ending shows Walter physically losing the fight in the final arena. Yet in the aftermath, Henry looks defeated himself. Then he clutches his head and falls to his knees, only to stand and seem very different. The victory comes from within Henry's own heart and mind. If he holds to hope, if he continues to believe in people and the future, he can escape and be victorious. This victory is even more likely if Eileen lives because her survival gives Henry hope. Her loss hurts him and possibly helps to convince him that the nature of this world is suffering. Thus, if Henry comes to the final battle without hope, if he enters the arena depressed and unsure, losing faith in the future, then it doesn't matter if he physically defeats Walter. In his heart, Walter has already won.